Trauma Therapist Podcast Plus listeners can listen to episodes early and ad-free right now. Become a Plus listener by going to Apple Podcasts, searching for the Trauma Therapist Podcast, and signing up today. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. All right, so here we go. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Very excited to have her back, Tracy Morgan. Tracy, welcome.
Hi, nice to be back.
So, you are back. I invited you back. I wanted you back because I thoroughly enjoyed having you on the first time we chatted. Let me read your bio and then we will dive in here. Tracy's been qualified as a therapist since 2005 and practicing continuously in the NHS in the UK ever since. She spent 12 years in community treatment of early psychosis and is now a clinical lead mental health liaison practitioner working out of acute hospital ER departments. She's a trauma coach and also a solution-focused hypnotherapist and committed to the foundations of Milton Erickson, and that therapy is about the relationship, not necessarily the dogma of any specific modality. She says, in her own words, I continue to work in the NHS, but also have a thriving private practice where I support people to literally use their own inner resources to heal with a combination of neurology, solution-focused therapy, and occupational therapy. Tracy, welcome back.
Lovely to be here.
So just quickly, briefly, rather, remind our listeners, those who hadn't tuned into the first time we chatted, where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I am originally from Scotland. I was brought up near Loch Lomond. But I have lived in the West Midlands in England for, good grief, 30 years. So I've been here my whole adult life, qualified in England and things. So, yeah. Awesome.
So you said before we were recording that it was kismet is the word you used, that I had reached out to you when I did. Explain.
I'd actually spammed a lot of people, sort of different podcast producers and things like that. I didn't actually send you one, which was really strange. I'd done it all the night before. I thought, right, feel the fear, do it anyway, get back out there, because I've obviously had a lot of development in my career and in my therapy practice since then. And I thought, right, I need to start working on getting myself out there, because obviously I'm building on the business I already have. And the following morning, after I sent all these emails, I got you in my inbox. And I was like, really? Of all I didn't email him. So it was like, I almost feel it was like almost like a bit of a divine, there's the person that you just speak.
Okay, so I've got to ask, why didn't you email me?
I think because I'd already been on the podcast once, and it was literally, I'd done it, when we're sort of feeling the fear and doing it anyway, we tend to sort of do it in a little bit of a temper, but not a temper, if you know what I mean. It's that kind of, right, just do it. And I think I only emailed 3 others, to be honest. And of course yours came in, and I was like, it was literally, I went to bed. I did the emails at 8 p.m. I went to bed at 9 p.m. I got up the following morning at 5 p.m. and there you were in my inbox. And I went, wow. So amazing.
Well, let's get into it here. So, give our listeners kind of a foundation of what you do, and then we'll talk more about how things have unfolded for you.
Okay, the last time I was on the show, I had very, very recently almost died. I had a condition called necrotizing fasciitis and sepsis. I had to have life-saving surgery. blessed be the NHS, free at the point of need here, that we still have. And essentially, I was just coming through, actually lived through more adult trauma when I actually spoke to you guys anyway. Now, the really interesting thing is that today I got a time hop on my journal. So I'm actually going to read out, this wasn't public knowledge, this was something I wrote to myself. And it'll lead on quite nicely into how I've then developed as a trauma therapist, as a trauma coach. I actually wrote this exactly, so we're on the 8th today, so the 8th of February 2020, just before COVID, I actually wrote this. Today I realised how mortal and fragile I actually am. Today I realised I may not have much more of a future. Today I thought I should really write letters, just in case. Today felt grey and scary. Today I didn't share my fear with anyone, even though I could have. Today I realised everyone around me is as scared as I am. And today I realised that what I have done to myself and the result of that may chase away some of my sunshine, and that scares me. Today I realise the fragility of my humanness, and it terrifies me because I fought and endured the abuse of others. But if my body stops healing and gives up, that's it. There is not a thing I can do to stop that. Also a little bit of kismet that was actually thrown up as my time hop. Currently, I used to work in early intervention and psychosis. I think the episode number that we had was 314, Guy, because I looked it up. And I used to work in early intervention and psychosis, and I now work as a liaison team manager practitioner within the NHS. Now, that is basically, I'm a mental health professional. I have a team of them who go into ER departments to people who are in very severe distress, are acutely mentally unwell and have turned up in ambulances or with their family saying, please help us. I also deal with the extremely suicidal. And all of my practice up until now has basically prepared me to support and train the staff that go in there. I still go into and actually still practice as a specialist clinician, but I don't do it as much as my staff do. And it brings me to the fact that our bodies, when they've been traumatized, and that can be from childhood, it can be repeated trauma, and then it can be a car accident, and essentially this negatively impacts on our ability to heal. And I mean physically heal, not just mentally heal. I mean physically, immune systems, our ability to digest our food, and all of these things. And I think what I've just read to you was basically, I was sitting there and I was still getting temperatures. They were pumping me full of antibiotics, and they were working, but they were working very, very slowly. And I was still spiking a temperature. I still felt really ill. I could barely move. And I thought, I don't know how to fight this, because as a trauma survivor, and I'm sure that we all know that some of the coping mechanisms for that are keep fighting. That means clean the house, work harder, work out harder, eat less, punish yourself, punish your body, keep going. And the thing was, at that point in time, I realised that, number one, I was physically unable to do any of those things. And I had to find another way. And what I had to do was I had to allow my brain to heal so that my body got a chance to heal. So, and then that brought me to solution-focused hypnotherapy, which I'm training in. And by the time this goes to air, I'll probably be fully qualified in. And it's whereby we work with people to keep them in the part of their brain that allows them to access the solutions, as opposed to being in the limbic system or the primitive brain. I'll give a little tiny bit of an example of that. When I walk over 2-hour ER department in the city of Coventry. It's quite a long walk, really. And when it's very cold and when it's very hot, you can get kind of out of breath, a bit sweaty. You can feel a bit harassed. We're also working to a timetable because we have a key performance indicator saying that we have to be there with that person within 60 minutes of referral. Now, the amount of times I have said this to doctors that have accompanied me, or students, or other practitioners, or new practitioners, they'll start to walk really fast, and I'll say, slow down. And they'll be like, but we're on a time limit. And I'm like, I need you to slow down, and I'm going to tell you why. And as I'm walking, I'm telling them, I'll say, we're on our way to see someone who is possibly the most distressed they have ever been. As far as they are concerned, the world is incredibly dangerous. The world is full of frightening polar bears, and everything is a risk. We're going to walk into an ER department that is making loud noises, beeping. There's going to be people panicking. There's going to be really ill people. There's going to be crash trolleys flying all over the place. I says, but see, when we get there, we're going to walk into that person, and if we're out of breath or sweaty or even a little bit stressed facially, it's not going to be what we say. It's going to be what they see and what they pick up at a very instinctual level that will reinforce the fact that the world is terrifying and full of polar bears, and we have just walked in and reinforced that the world is dangerous. And if we do that, they are going to be in their primitive brain, in their limbic system. They are going to stay there, and we are not, anything we say, anything we suggest, anything at all is going to be completely ignored, because all they're going to be thinking is fight, flight, freeze. It's the end of the world. And when I tell them this, they go, I never thought of it like that. And I went, watch what happens. So they watch what happens. And one of the first things I do is I walk in and I smile and I go, you're having a really bad day, aren't you? I says, however, it's really nice weather out there, or it's a fresh day. I will say something that is an inconsequential comment. And I'll sit down and I will attempt to bring them from being in their right prefrontal cortex that has got a direct link into their limbic system, which is worry, fear, all the negative stories they've ever known and ever experienced. I will want to lift them out of that, move them into their left prefrontal cortex, which has got all the direct links into the cerebral cortex, where they can start to solve problems, and it's got every memory and every way that they have ever got through a similar distress before. And it works. It works every time. And I have been using it my entire career, and I had no idea that that's what I was doing.
Wow. Let me just stop you there, Tracy, and say, whoa, I'm so glad I emailed you to come back on here. First of all, thank you so much for sharing that journal entry. I mean, I got goosebumps when you were reading that. It was very intense. Can you talk more about, I just loved your description of your walk to the ER and how you utilize that to gather yourself and the tools, in a sense, you use. Can you talk more about your entree into solution-focused therapy?
Wow. Here's a story of, I really do sound quite woo-woo at this point, and I do apologize. I'm very, very scientific. When I qualified as a therapist in 2005, I was really lucky. I worked in Birmingham and I was on rotation, which meant I moved to different departments to learn my craft. And because of that, I got sent on all the good training. because we weren't counted really as staff numbers. We were supernumerary. So I got sent on a course. It was all quite new at the time, and it was called Solution-Focused Brief Therapy. It was born out of brief family therapy, which is the base of that is in America. When you go to it doesn't really matter, but it was born from all of this research of let's stop working with the psychoanalytic model because all we're doing is re-traumatizing everyone. Let's stop digging at it. There's got to be a better way. And they started doing that work. So this theory of practice came in, and it was solution-focused brief therapy. And I was trained for 5 days intensive on how to deliver this. Now, being a very young, enthusiastic, shiny, everything's unicorns, I just took it for granted that I've learnt this, so therefore I use it. And I continued to use it my entire career. So that's the first part of that. I've always been very much into stories that heal, narrative, metaphor, that kind of thing. I used to think it was cheating. I never quite knew why it was working, but it does. Then in 2006, I self-funded, and off I went to the Human Givens Institute, and I learned about let's stop talking psychobabble at people. Let's stop even speaking in psychobabble with each other. Let's just actually be real with people and tell them what's going on with their own minds. Let's teach them how to do it. So that was the Human Givens model. Now, fast forward all the way to just as I was recording with you, I think I was supposed to have an interview with the solution-focused hypnotherapy training school in Bristol in the UK, because I was seriously thinking about engaging in that process. However, I didn't, because obviously I'd been so desperately ill. And in August last year, I got an email randomly out of the blue asking me if I was still interested. I went for the interview and I got it. Now, as I've been training, I've realised that every single training course I have ever done throughout my entire occupational therapy career has basically provided me with the entire development of solution-focused hypnotherapy, which is quite amazing. So that's how I came to be there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if in America, you probably heard about it. You know that you've probably been trained in it. Quite a lot of people have. The miracle question. So if you woke up tomorrow morning and somebody turned up and a miracle has happened and you are exactly where you want to be, what's different? The miracle question, that's solution-focused hypnotherapy. Well, solution-focused brief therapy. And then obviously we have the hypnosis, the trance state, which creates the focus between the subconscious and the conscious mind so that they actually come into focus. And, there's nothing woo about it at all. But yeah. So that's generally what it's about.
What? So this theme of, or it's more than a theme with you, but the knowledge, the reality that the relationship is important, being real. Talk about why that is important to you, why that resonates with you.
Right. I'm probably going to speak about a case, actually.
Oh, great.
And it was, it's a wonderful case. Obviously, I won't mention names, but it was a young woman in her early to mid 30s who had gone through our crisis team system. And she basically was diagnosed. She was very psychotic when I picked her up. She had 3 children. One of them was only 2 at the time. She had a husband, a beautiful house, a very nice, a nice life. And I went, she was probably one of the most unwell people at the point of actually me taking the case on. And gently, bit by bit, the strange thing was she visited me yesterday. I mean, it's been years since I discharged her, but she visited me because she's actually a peer support worker within the NHS trust that I work in. So she's actually gone on to be a therapist and a support worker herself, which is phenomenal. However, and that would have been a diagnosis of schizophrenia in the bad old days. She's not got that at all. And And the first time I met her, she was still quite psychotic. We were still early days of just medicating that imbalance. And I remember sitting down with her husband and I said to her, I said, you are not going to understand a single thing I am about to say. But I promise that I will keep reminding you so that one day you will understand what I'm about to say. And what I said to her husband was, at the moment, we have pressed Control-Alt-Delete on your wife's brain. I said, and she may appear very switched off, very distant. I says, and we're going to restart her in safe mode, just like a Windows computer. And it will take some time to get all of the hard drive back online and everything all working and safe again. However, she will come back, but we need to be gentle and don't push this, because this is actual neurological damage that's happened. That woman is phenomenal. And we were talking about it yesterday. She said, I don't know what it was about you. You were always just able to tell the right story about something at the right time. She says, it was almost like, she said, you just can do it. Because she contacted me about a career idea that she had. And I was speaking to her and I was putting things together as she was messaging me. And she went, why do you always seem to know the right thing to say? And I said, because I'm listening to you. Mm-hmm. I'm listening to you, not symptoms, not risk. And I'm definitely not wanting to hear or listen to your story of trauma. I don't want to dig into somebody's trauma. If they tell me, that's fine. But the idea is when somebody has expressed something from the right prefrontal cortex, it is our job, it is our responsibility, it's our moral responsibility to ensure we do not leave them there. And whether we use humour or we use a story, we have to lift them out of it, because if we leave it there, we're not resolving anything. And so it's the stories that heal. Milton Erickson, as you said in my bio, an incredible guy, and nobody could ever actually work out or standardise what he did either. Just like I can't standardise what I do. I can give you an idea of the tools that I use within what I do, but I can't standardise it because every single person is different. But the one things I don't do is, number one, we do not wallow. Number two, I do not, under any circumstances, start digging into trauma and asking them details. All we're doing is ensuring that their primitive mind is saying, see, it's happening again. Primitive mind is deeply stupid. It doesn't know if the thing you're thinking about or consuming, either off the television or off the news or a friend, it doesn't know it's not happening to us. So what it's doing is, with every single negative thought the brain has, it's accumulating it straight into the hippocampus. And all that stress has to go somewhere.
Right. When did you realize the significance, the importance of, like you said, I'm listening to you. I'm not digging for your trauma. When did you realize that there was magic in that? There was healing in that.
Oh yeah. Well, the really, really odd thing is, not strangely, same person I was conversing with yesterday, it was a little bit of that's how I word that, brilliant, was trauma is a strange thing. Trauma is a strange thing because what one person would see as a trauma, another person would go, really? Right. That's not bad. Wait till you hear my story. Right. I have dealt with people who have been sexually assaulted, gang raped, been in war situations, been in horrific relationship abuse, intimate relationship abuse. Also worked with a lot of people who have been systematically childhood sexual abuse within families. But the thing is, what they see as trauma, somebody who hasn't had that background may see a boy when they're a teenager being slightly too handsy, say, or maybe saying something negative about their body as being deeply, deeply wounding. That doesn't make that trauma any less significant. we still need to treat that with respect and not get them to dig into it and play around with it. What we need to do is we need to acknowledge that person is distressed by it, validate it. We don't need to ask questions about it. We just need to say, that sounds really tough.
Mm-hmm.
And then lift them from the right prefrontal cortex where that memory is and say, how do you want things to look? Mm-hmm. What do you want to be doing instead? What are you missing from before the trauma or before the realization that there was a trauma? What do you want to do? How do you want, instead of concentrating on the problem or the trauma, let's focus on how you want things to be, not how you don't want them to be. There's no value in that. Telling stories is valuable, but we have to be so mindful of how those memories come up and are shared. Because when someone does share that, and quite often, especially in statutory services, and I'm sure it's the same in the States, if somebody's in distress, how many professionals will they have to tell that trauma to?
Right.
The brain thinks it's happening every single time. We're not helping. We're really not helping. We're making it worse. We all have to ask the questions. We all have to ask them. I have to ask them. It's like, I always prefix this with this statement, and it's not on the paperwork, but I always prefix it. It says, I'm going to ask you a question. I want you to answer yes or no. You have no need to share that with me because you may never see me again. And I don't want to keep putting you through that. I just need a yes or a no. Have you ever suffered from any form of abuse, physical, sexual, neglect, psychological, or emotional? And it's a yes or no. That's it. Because let's acknowledge it. And then let's hand it to the people who may do it, especially in emergency care. Obviously, that's where I work. But we need to be so mindful we're not constantly asking people. And the problem is, it just seems to me, I don't know if it's just here in the UK or if it's worldwide or it's a Western world, but all people seem to want to do is talk about the trauma. Mm-hmm. Oh, and what happened? EMDR does it. EMDR does this. Especially in complex trauma. It's like, please stop asking people.
Tracy, when did you realize that's not necessarily the most beneficial way to do things?
The neurology told me that. Basic understanding of how the limbic system works, how we get the limbic system and the cerebral cortex and the prefrontal cortex is to actually work together. That's when it really crystallized. I always knew it. Mm-hmm. I always knew it. I mean, in that text that I read out earlier that I sent to myself as like a personal journal, I didn't tell anyone how I was feeling at that point. I was 3 days post almost dead. I didn't tell anybody about that. I told no one. Because number one, they were all traumatized as well because they almost lost their mum and their partner and all the rest of it. But the thing was that sometimes you don't want to talk about it. The cure to distress is not necessarily telling the story over and over and over again. There is a catharsis in writing your story. Clearly there is. There's plenty of it out there. How many stories do we see that are people that have written autobiographies, and they're phenomenally fascinating and all the rest of it. However, to think that that's how you recover is actually incorrect. How you recover is you heal first, and then you tell the story as a story, because it has been transferred from being an emotional memory in the limbic system, and it has been moved into the cerebral cortex, where we have emotional control over it, where we can realize that it tells time. The cerebral cortex knows the difference between past, present, future. The limbic system has no clue. It's happening, and it is happening now. And panic button on, fight, flight, freeze, depression. Depression is a safety behavior that comes from the limbic system. Not a lot of people know that. Not a lot of therapists know that. It's a safety behavior. It comes from our primitive ancestors. And it's once we realize this and actually get people to start living back in their left prefrontal cortex, in their cerebral cortex, actually problem solving, functioning, living their lives, positive actions, positive interactions, sort of positive thoughts. That's how mindfulness works, bringing you into the present moment. It's why gratitude practice works. It's positive thought. It's why running works, positive action. It's not scrolling through Facebook, making sure that our interactions remain positive, staying away from those toxic friends that whine and bitch all the time. You know, that once we do that and they're doing that, then actually they can start to process, because the brain will start to do it naturally.
Right. And solution-focused therapy, of course, one is engaging the prefrontal cortex, right?
Yes, the left prefrontal cortex.
What excites you about that so much?
The most exciting thing about it is, how many therapists do we see burn out and trauma? And why is that? How many nervous breakdowns and illness do we see? And the reason for that is our primitive mind has no clue whether what we are hearing or consuming is happening to us, or it's from the past or the future, or if it's a worry. That means that if we are listening to constant tales of distress and trauma, what actually happens is our brains are taking that on and putting it into our hippocampus and overloading it. Therefore, the beauty of the solution focused is that you are not in any way traumatizing yourself either. You are avoiding the consumption of a lot of negative worry. It's one of the things that when I was working on the community and early intervention, people said, we don't understand why you don't burn out. I would see all of my patients at least once a week. I was really engaged. My clients didn't relapse. I had no hospital admissions, definitely no use of the Mental Health Act, no suicides. And that was in 12 years. And it was like, well, what am I doing different? My manager at the time was like, are we cherry picking your clients? What is going on? And what it is that I go to people and I say, right, how do you want things to be? I will cheerlead you. I will help you access the cerebral cortex and all of the stuff how you want your life to be. And we will problem solve those together. And we do it with humor. We do it with metaphor. We do it with going out on a bike. I've done it with going out on a bike. Occupational therapy in the UK, it's really a difficult thing for you to understand in America, and I actually worked out why. The equivalent job in America is a licensed clinical social worker in mental health. That's what I am here, but That's what I do over there. So, but we use activity, we use positive action all the time. So in occupational therapy, we do that. So it was like embedded in what I did. And it really hugely different. I mean, yeah, I have clients walking up to me in the street and hugging me that I've had years and years ago. They never forget me for some reason.
And we contrast that with, say, a typical approach to someone who's been traumatized. Granted, not everyone, just goes in there and jumps in and digs into the trauma. But contrast what you just said and the way you work with how maybe other people might approach that.
Okay. I'll probably tell another story because that's how I explain things. I had a young lady. I was out working, doing my day-to-day stuff, and I was in my car. I had another client with me. We'd been out, we'd had coffee, we'd been at a bookshop, we'd been talking about literature or something. And I got a text message from another client who said, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I am done. Yeah. I read it. I said, where are you? They told me. I says, I'll be with you in 20 minutes. I'm in a different town at the moment, but I'll be with you in 20 minutes. You hold that thought. I said to my other client, I went, oh, right, I'm going to just rush off. I said, I can't sit and chat in the car like we usually do because I've just got to go and see someone else. They took that with the understanding of that they had experienced a bit of a crisis in their life as well. So they knew that I would kind of drop things and go and deal with the distress. I went up to the young women's home because I worked on the community. So we worked in people's homes, and I sat down and I says, okay, we're in a bit of a pickle. And what came out was, I've had enough of this. I never said the word suicide once. It was implied in the text message, but I never said it. When I got there, I went, what seems to be getting on top of you? Let's have a look. And she said, I'm trying to get the kids ready for the holiday, and we've not got the transport sorted, and oh, it's all these things, and oh, my parents are a nightmare, and oh my God, and everybody thinks I'm a nutcase, and all this. And I went, and breathe. That's a lot. You've got a lot going on. A lot going on. So let's have a look at what are the things you really need to do to make this wonderful, amazing holiday that you've been so looking forward to actually happen. Because it's always a bit stressful going on holiday. I get that. I'm the same myself. We're all the same. You know, everybody gets a little bit. Ugh. But when you've got a long-term mental illness and other challenges going on, those kind of things, it's just huge. And she went, well, I need to find transport. And I was like, well, what was the idea before? And she says, well, we were going to go by train. And I says, well, why isn't that an option? We haven't got enough money. Okay. Is there any way you can, conjure up that money? I left that lady's house 45 minutes later. She'd organised her tickets for the kids. She'd organised her dad to actually drive the other bits across that were going to get missed because of the train. And essentially, that crisis and that distress was actually reduced. Now, another practitioner, perhaps, who's very, very stressed themselves because they're listening to a lot of deeply distressing things about self-harm and suicide, if they get a text saying, I've had enough, I don't want to be here anymore, they press their own panic button and they start to go into, right, I need to call a mental health act assessment, and it's commitment papers, essentially. I need to get a doctor. We need to medicate this. No, we don't. First of all, we need to listen. First of all, we need to actually get the context of the distress. Because the primitive brain doesn't know whether it's a big problem or a little problem or in the past, or they're worrying about something in the future, or if it's actually a big, scary polar bear roaring in their face. It's all the same. It is a problem now, and the whole of the limbic system will react with anxiety, anger, or depression. And it's as simple as that. And the thing is that practitioners don't realise that, first of all, we need to listen. And the reason for that is because their own limbic system, their own primitive brain kicks in first. Mm-hmm. There's certain key words that, as a clinician working with the severely distressed, will spark that, oh my God, I'm going to end up in coroner's court. It's like, I want to commit suicide. I've hurt someone. I feel like hurting someone, or I'm hearing voices. Okay, let's talk about that then. And because I'm calm, the client calms down. Mirror neurons, polyvagal theory. And it just all sorts itself out. How many times? I mean, actually, this happened at the end of last year. I'll never forget it. I've got all eco in my house. I now have a solar array on my house. I now have air source heating. It's fabulous. However, this was all happening at the end of the year in winter. And I was studying for my hypnotherapy qualification. I had to sort out all my insurances. I had to start a website. I had to do coursework. And I was also working 3 15-hour days a week and managing a team, which is still quite new to me. I wasn't a team manager before, so I'm still having to navigate the management system. I got up one morning and I thought, I just want to stay in my pajamas, make a big cup of hot tea and get my blanket on and watch Netflix. I had so much to do. And the thing, I remember I stood up and I walked over and I was looking at my wall light and I went, why do I want to go into hibernation mode? Because hibernation mode is the primitive brain's way of keeping us safe. When our ancestors would look out of their cave, they would see snow and ice everywhere or danger all around. So they would get back in the cave, They'd snuggle down, get their bear skins, suppress all their bodily functions, and wait for the danger to pass. I was like, what's my blizzard? What's the blizzard? I knew to do it because both my unconscious and my conscious brains now actually communicate. I went, right, what's the blizzard? Where's the blizzard? What's the blizzard? I went, I'm feeling overwhelmed. So I've got this, and this going on. I have a reason to feel overwhelmed, and all of them are temporary, and I am not going to die from any of them. And that acknowledgement, and then validating it's okay to feel a bit rubbish today. Make a list, do one thing at a time. And I did that. I didn't end up depressed. I'm not on Prozac. It's fine. That's just life. And if we just realise that no matter how mentally ill or how traumatised someone is, they've got the same neurological basis that we have.
Tracy, you are so friggin' inspiring. I love talking to you, man. I'm speaking with Tracy Morgan. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Tracy?
Right. I have a website. Even if you Google, I mean, I know you'll probably have it in the show notes anyway. If you Google ultraviolet holistic therapies.co.uk, you will find me. And you can contact me through that on the contact. The website is still being built, so there's things being added to that all the time. Clearly, I will take on clients to work with, because I don't think anybody doesn't benefit from the type of work that I'm doing. There's also a Facebook group, which is a very positively inspiring Facebook group, which unfortunately I've not been working on as much as I used to, but I'm planning to up it in that self-actualizing trauma thrivers on Facebook. You will see my photograph on there. You join the group. It's a closed group. There is definitely nobody complaining, moaning, or talking about what horrible things have happened to them. It's actually about the triumphs of every little win that they have, and everybody sort of celebrating that and encouraging each other. There are videos of me talking about all kinds of crazy things and awesome. Singing on my roof. I was singing on my roof at one point. It was quite a giggle. So there's that. There's also, you can email me at tracy_morgan@me.com as well. And I think there's going to be a WhatsApp link from a business WhatsApp as well. Okay. So there's lots of ways to get hold of me. Yeah.
Awesome. I'll have those linked up here at the show notes page at the traumatherapistpodcast.com. You know, there's an energy that I love hopefully bringing to this podcast, and you embody that. And that I knew when we first talked, I was going to have this woman back, and I'm so glad I did. You're so friggin' inspiring, and I just love talking to you and listening to you, and I can feel your energy. It's amazing. Love it. Love you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Sincerely, I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. We'll be in touch.
Okay.